Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's session. Today's session is powered by G-Accon. If you've not heard of G-Accon before, welcome. Very excited to talk you through it today. My name is Trent McLaren and I will be your MC and host. I'm dialing in from Sydney, Australia. It is 7 o'clock. I've just had dinner and my good friend Jonathan is joining us today. Jonathan, how are you, mate?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I've got a day ahead rather than ending it, but no, I'm excited.
I don't want to trade places. I'm glad the day is over. Have you
Got
had a cup of coffee or a tea yet?
it sat in front of me, drinking
Love it.
away. This is number two. This is number two.
Good, good. Well, you're going to be full of energy, I'm sure. For those that are joining us, I'd love for you to jump into the chat and just let me know that you can hear and see us okay. So we've got some slides on the screen, cameras are running, microphones are on. Just let me know you can see everything, you can hear it all. This is our tech check. Thank you, Pete. Love the explanation points. That tells me you're also full of energy. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate it. Q&A is also working. Thank you, Jalita. Perfect. So if you do have questions throughout, team, you will be able to ask them in the chat and the Q&A. This is an interactive session. Today, we're going to unpack how Jonathan has been using G-Accon as his flexible backdoor into Xero. Now, we're going to unpack what does that mean in just a moment. Now, this session is recorded. So if you like it, you hear something you think, hey, that was pretty cool. I didn't know you could do that. And you want to share it with a team member, a colleague, or you just want to play it back, you can. We're going to send you the recording later after this session. If it's not today, it'll likely be my tomorrow / your afternoon, evening. So we look forward to seeing you do that. Lastly, if you do have any feedback about the session, we'd love to capture that at the end as well, because we're going to keep doing more of these kind of sessions. A little bit about G-Accon. Business was born and founded out of the US, but is a global tool, which you're going to come to hear more about. So it's known and loved by over 10,000 companies across Australia, the US, and importantly, the UK. Now, what does G-Accon do? We talk about G-Accon as a data extraction tool. So you can suck data out of your favorite general ledger software. In this case, we're talking about how Jonathan and the FD Works team do that at Xero, with Xero, I should say, and extract and push that into Google Sheets. Now, hopefully you love Google Sheets, and we're going to talk a lot about that in today's session. If you don't, if you are an Excel lover, also fine. There are ways to integrate, and we'll talk through some of those different things as we go. Enough about me. Jonathan, I'd love to introduce you and tell us about yourself. Tell us about FD Works and just your story. Tell us more.
Okay, so my background is I'm a chartered management accountant. What does that mean? Why is that relevant? I spent 20 years in industry, so like large corporates, banking, and in that time, I'd say I was a bit of a data monkey. So I love data, love diving into kind of what the stories it could tell. So I did a lot of work with kind of like SQL, big systems, extracting it and bringing it into a spreadsheet. And for me, that's like my happy place of being able to play around with it. 2012 started using Xero, and the whole kind of like concept was I wanted to give small businesses the same finance support that a large business had. So at Lloyd's, you had a great finance team that helped you kind of give you direction. Small businesses didn't have that. And I saw with Xero that there was almost this opportunity of working far closer with small businesses and giving them their own finance team. So that was really the start of the journey. And it's always been about how can we build brilliant finance teams and how can we start to kind of revolutionize the way they do things. And so a lot of what we have done is we will work with our bigger clients and we'll shape something. And then with those bigger clients, we then create something that we can roll out across our entire kind of customer base. And I'd say that's probably where G-Accon has been a key part of it. Um, some of you may know that I've also then got into the software space. So we built a tool called Xavier Analytics, which was acquired by Dext within a short space of time. And it was all about data quality and it was about bringing data out and then being able to look at it and go, well, that's wrong and fix it. And I would say the ability to be able to pull things out via the API and do things on scale was a key part of that and helped to shape quite a lot of what we did within Xavier. So yeah, I'd say G-Acon's been a key part of that. And yeah, I'm continuing to play in the software space with the latest venture, which is Socket.
Yeah, love it. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about Socket and something I've also had a bit of a close heart to in years past?
Yeah,
Uh,
so Socket is really our answer. Like, so for me, when we got down into it, we realized that the proposal is the key part of like the business. So if you've got a great proposal in place, it tells you what you're doing, but also what you're not doing. And it's almost like Socket is built around getting those proposals right, but also then what we call work orders, like the additional work. How do we kind of track that? So yeah, we're looking to take over the proposal space.
All right, watch this space. Me too. I will be as well. Look forward to seeing it all happen. As I just push through on here, welcome to everyone that's here. We've been here for now 7 minutes, and I hope you're all settled in. You got a cuppa or wherever you are. Feel free to tell us where you're dialing in from. I expect most of you are coming in from the UK. We talked about FT Works and how they use Xero as a flexible backdoor, and I think when we break that down, what does that topic mean? We're talking about how does FTWorks use G-Accon to export data automatically out of Xero. We probably will also talk a little bit about how to push data back into Xero as well, which surprised me a little bit as we went through it. We've got some folks from Sydney and Melbourne here. I love that you're all joining us for a late night sesh. This is a good time. Welcome. Tyler Caskey, my favorite man, knows a good automation webinar when he sees one. So we're going to talk a lot about the how do we get data out of Xero, how we get data back into Xero, and Jonathan, you're a big fan of the Xero APIs, and we're going to
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit as we go. So before we continue, I am going to Jolita from Poland. So good, thanks for joining. We're a very global, got a global audience today, mate. This is great. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I just want to focus on now you, mate. So I'd love for you to just tell us what led you down this path. Now, you talked about this before around the scalability of data, and you mentioned the magic words of the Xero API, which we've talked a lot about in our pre-game for this session.
Yeah.
Do you want to just talk us through why that was so important, and what are the sort of types of services and work you do with your clients that is forcing you to look at this stuff?
Yeah. So I guess Zero's great in the sense that it does what it says in the tin. Beautiful accounting software. And I think for kind of 80% of the jobs, it does exactly that. Where we started to struggle in some instances is when you're trying to do things at scale. So it's almost like that repetitive job. Got to do this again and again and again. And I'll give you one example, which is probably one of the biggest game changer pieces for us. We worked with a training company that worked predominantly with schools, and schools still deal with paper checks. Like, it's 2024, it's a little bit bonkers, but the reason was they needed to get dual signatures, and so checks were still relevant. If you think about how you do that in Xero, you've probably got 3 or 4 screens that you need to kind of go through. And I reckon that it was taking us 3 or 4 days. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of checks each week that we had to process. And we're just looking at it, and you can see people in the corner kind of like just curling up and die because it was so boring. And then it's kind of like, I wonder, I wonder what we can do via the API. So we started like digging into the API, and it's incredible what you can and can't do with it. So we realized that actually, in order to kind of process a check, we were kind of deconstructing Xero a little bit and going, well, what's it doing? Okay, so it's creating a bank payment, which is attaching to an invoice, and then that will then appear in the bank. So very, very quickly, what we did is we realized that we could push information in but also pulling it out. So what we ended up with is a really simple exercise of extracting invoices out using G-Accon. And from that, we could see which ones were unpaid, i.e., we're waiting for a payment. And then we were just able to then go, is that one? And then to create another flow, which then just pushed the bank payment in. So literally, we took this task, which was taking days a week down to suddenly something that we could do within like hours. And it was someone just like keying in on the back of the check was a number, put that in. Yes, that's outstanding. Boom, post it. So suddenly we had this massive kind of win that we were able to take a process which was hugely, hugely manual and just automate it. And literally, it was that bit of no fancy software, doing it all within a spreadsheet. And we've then almost kind of scaled some of those tasks now of things like journals. So when we post a journal, it's not a case of, you've got to go into Xero to be able to kind of post a journal. We can do a lot of that kind of work and prep. And a lot of the prep is sometimes it's a download a report using G-Accon, look at something, do some calculations which are already quite kind of automated because we're getting the data in a standard, and then we're just pushing it back. So you've almost got this bit where you can start to spend time building a really solid process that is then simply scalable because what you're doing is you're then just going, right, it's the same for every company we've got within our portfolio. The difference, you might have a few change of chart of account codes, but what we've done there is we're using something called Xero report codes. And I don't know whether many people know it. In my mind, it's a bit of a hidden treasure where it's three letters with a dot. And so you can then start to standardize a non-standard chart of account code. And that's really like the big thing for us of just taking those repetitive processes, what are you doing, and then just starting to say, is there a way to push this information in, or is there a way to pull this information out? And it's simple as that. Just start by looking at the API docs. What can I push? What can I pull? Using a demo company as like a bit of a guinea pig, working it out. And I think for a lot of accountants and bookkeepers or kind of smart data illiterate people, you'll just look at it and go, this is fucking amazing. Because genuinely, getting things out the back door is freaking awesome.
Yeah, so much more. Well, a lot of ways faster and efficient too, right? Because
Yeah,
if you know your way around Google Sheets, which don't everyone hate on me for saying this, but I know a lot of people that prefer Google Sheets over Excel.
I love
You
it.
too? Yeah.
Yeah. So
What?
so for me, I spent every year, all the time that was in industry, I loved Excel and I would never hear a bad word about it. The last 5 years, Google Sheets, I would say, is way, way better than Excel. And I'll fight anyone if they say any different. And a big difference for me is I've been teaching myself to code. And that's then another superpower. If you get this data, learn how to code, and it will blow your mind.
I love it. So good. So just to take a step back, how did you guys come across G-Accon in the first place? What was the first thing you were trying to solve with it? And then as you've learned how to use G-Accon, how has that expanded your thinking on how you work with your clients?
Yeah, so
Sorry, Andrew's already commented. Excel is better for formatting and presentations. A lot of that'll be our next session. I think it could be a debate. That could be a fun one to do.
yeah, no,
Good to
I'm kind of a little bit with Andrew. It is easier to format in Excel. I think it's like me and Dave Selleck have this conversation all the time. I think sometimes you've got to be a little bit creative. You've got to do things in a different way in Sheets to make it work. But yeah, presentation is perhaps the one where I'd say Excel does win.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you, mate. Nice. Very good. Sorry, I'll come back to my question. So what were you doing that led you to look into G-Accon, and how has that evolved the way you guys think about now how you work with different clients, approach different situations?
Yes. I think for me, it's that bit of we realized quite early on, Xero is a great tool and you wouldn't need a lot. So sometimes if you've only got one client to look after, I think life would be sweet because you'd be able to kind of just go in. But it's that bit of when you were doing very similar tasks at scale, that's the bit where you then start looking for simpler ways of being able to do things. And it might be weekly reporting is a bit of an example of almost like that bit of, well, how many invoices do we issue in a week? And you start looking at it and you start scratching your head, and it's like, how am I going to do that? And you can work out how to do it manually, but you can't then kind of scale it. And then that's the bit. And I started off in the first instance that when I started back in 2012, I was a little bit naive to this. And I read up about the API and I could see how it could work. And we actually commissioned a tool, but you had to create the JSON um, data extract to push into Xero. And it was taking as long almost to kind of try and create these JSON extracts. And then you just start looking at kind of like the options. And it was one of those, it's like that magic moment where you see something in the marketplace and it's like, oh my God, this says I can get stuff from the API into Google Sheets. Gotta have a go at this. And that for me was almost like we've been with G-Accon for a long, long time. And I think back in those early days, there was an element of it may not have done everything. There may have been some data points, but the team were just super, super supportive and proactive around, right, great, okay, does it work for you? Give me a bit of time, add it. And that was then almost a bit. So it's that bit of constantly scouring the app marketplace. Um, and pretty much from day one, we saw it and it's like, this is a tool for us.
Yeah, love it. I've heard, so I've been doing a lot of interviews with G-Accon users, customers all over. One of the interesting ones I had was a gentleman named Clay based in Texas. I'm actually catching up with Clay tomorrow to do another session.
Nice.
And he would talk through the idea that as month end comes around, he can 9 a.m. on day one of the new month, and everything's already ready to go. It's all his end of month close is done. He can generally relax. He's having breakfast. He's hanging with the kids. 2 p.m. He's then sending these reports to clients, so they think he's done a little bit of work before the day started. Um, and it's brought so much time and freedom because of what they've been. And he was doing this across, I think it was 15 to 20 clients, so not hundreds or
Yeah.
thousands in that sense, but small but decent enough amount of clients where they're able to build these reports out, get all the data flows automated to the point where it was just a matter of him maybe fixing a few discrepancies, a few minor things, but just hitting send about 2:30, he reckons, to his clients so they know that month end is done
Yeah.
and they
So
can carry on.
we've got some clients where we've built almost like daily reporting packs for them. And it's the classic multi-entity. So you've got lots of bank accounts, you've got lots of kind of activities going through, and we've built some really neat little tools, which is almost that consolidation bit of bringing all of the information together, and then that runs at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So the FD in this instance is almost then able to kind of come in and rather than having to look through multiple um, organizations in Xero, they can see absolutely everything they want within a Google Sheet report. And it's almost that bit of we're able to just kind of append all of the information together and they love it. Like absolutely like love it. And we've set that up and it's run faultless, I would say, for probably the last 18 months, 2 years. I'm touching wood now because I don't want it to go wrong. But it was almost that bit of a little bit of upfront investment. And in some ways as well, it makes us stickier as accountants because that's a tool that we've created for them. It's a little bit of our IP in there. And if it goes somewhere else, well, they ain't taking the tool because that's our tool. We've invested in it. So I think there's some really kind of creative ways that you can almost like use G-Accon to kind of make you and what you do slightly different.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. That's yeah, that's super interesting. And I hadn't probably thought about it too much like that from what you said in terms of the stickiness piece. I know from the same story I was saying before with Clay, he was saying that where he used to get questions from clients leading up to board meeting time,
Yeah.
once they built in that live dashboard again in Google Sheets, he actually stopped getting a lot of questions. And when he was asking, like he was prepping himself saying, "Hey, is there anything you want to run through?" It's like actually we can see everything we need because you've been able to build it into this Google Sheets dashboard. Like it's all there.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, okay, well, amazing. Because previously that had been, trying to him having to dig out all the data and then present it back to them so they can then go and talk about it. But now, not the not the case because those clients have access to it. There's a good question from James. I'm going to ask you, Jonathan. So he said, James, thanks for your question, firstly. Jonathan, how do you tend to share the reports with clients? Do you keep it as a live report and share the underlying Google Sheet, or do you PDF and export it to them as a standalone document?
So I'm just give them absolutely everything. Like I don't going back to Andrew's point, if you try and PDF some of this stuff together, I don't think it hangs particularly well. I think you can make it look great. It's also then that bit of don't be fearful of them taking it and running with it. Like I just don't I think they'd look at some of this stuff and it's like I can't do it. So I wouldn't be worried about giving this to clients to allow them to run with it themselves, like to see it. For me, that's the key thing. I also think that one of the beauties of it being a spreadsheet is how you then bring some of the non-financials into it, and then you almost get some of these like volume value variances, and that's the bit where you can then encourage your clients to put in some of those non-financial measures into it that it brings, and it creates that one picture of things. We've also will build some really simple forecast models that we then give to a client for them to run. So it might be the ability where they can change when they're going to hire someone, and then that flows through, and we've got a mix of the actuals, the historics, but then we've also got the forward-thinking forecast. So for me, it's the more we are working from one set of data, the better. And I liken it to I want our clients to think of us as their finance team. And if you were working in a larger business, you wouldn't be afraid of sharing the information. So for me, that's the same approach that I take is, well, let's share the information, and they'll love what we do. So don't worry about them running off with it if they
Yeah.
do.
Well,
Um,
I mean, if they tried to, they wouldn't get the connection into the
yeah,
API anyway. So they'd
yes.
just be a spreadsheet. So yeah, awesome. That's great. Robert, thank you for your question. Robert is asking, he says, thanks, Jonathan. Very interesting. How do they approach the balance sheet recs, e.g., wages payable, which go out and require an underlying rec? Can this all be automated as well?
So we've done some work around working papers, and I think the way that we use G-Accon in that instance is with your working papers and your reconciliations, you always need to check it back to something. So what we're doing is we're using G-Accon to get trial balances from Xero that we can then match back to. So it's always that bit of we know the answer we're aiming for, and we've created some really nice working papers that give us that kind of flexibility. So it's the same approach though. You build it for one, you get it. And because you're building it for one, you can afford to spend more time in it. And then once you've got it right, you can then literally then just repeat it for other kind of your other clients. And this comes back to standardization. And it's like you can't standardize the numbering or you can't standardize the labeling, but what you can do, you can standardize the Xero report codes. And yeah, to Robert's question, yeah, we do everything in Google Sheets. And that for me is where we ventured a little bit into writing some basic code. and I say kind of relatively basic code. And the way I look at it is a spreadsheet enables you to be able to like you write a formula and it gets wider and wider and wider and wider and wider and you lose control of it. When you write code, you're able to kind of repeat through things and kind of it goes down the page. So yeah, I think it's relatively easy when you build it for one and then you scale from there. And yeah,
Yeah, awesome.
to
That's
Andrew,
great. And I'll just thanks for answering.
yeah, and to Andrew's point again, where we are kind of where things are consistent, we will push some stuff back in via the API. And again, this is also the bit where actually you can build annual views of things, and then it's almost that setup. And then once you've set things up, you can make it relatively easy to kind of keep maintaining things. So yeah, where possible, push things via the API. It's a bit of a no-brainer.
So we've talked about this previously. I asked you a question, I think it was probably 4 or 5 weeks ago we first had this conversation. I asked you what would you do if someone took G-Accon off you and you couldn't use it anymore. And the interesting thing you said at the time, which I don't know that you remembered until I mentioned it earlier today, but was that you'd fight tooth and nail to kind of keep G-Accon as like the tech you'd want to have in your business.
Yeah.
Do you mind if you just elaborate more about the impact you see G-Accon having in your tech stack amongst all the tools that I know you have running in the business?
Yeah, so I think for me, it feels as though it's almost like an integral part of Xero, and it's like why do I say it's an integral part? Because actually, it just enables us to be able to kind of shortcut a lot of what we do. It's almost like if we didn't have it, could we do it? Yeah, but it would take three, four, five times kind of longer, and it would be dull. So for me, it's like that bit of we've created these playbooks which enable us, like we take a new client on, plug it in, boom, we're ready to go. Um, and it's just saving us a heap of time. And it's also that bit of it enables us to standardize the way we work with clients, and then we can push stuff in. So standardize and push. Um, Even now, I'm thinking about other things that we've done using G-Accon. So we've got clients who've got quite a complicated admin system. And what we've done is we're kind of pulling that data into a Google Sheet, we're formatting it, and then we're pushing it straight in. So again, it's those um, automated tasks. And in this instance, we've got the client is almost like an intermediary. So we've got a sales invoice and we're creating a almost like a matching purchase invoice. So we're able to do something once, reflect these slight differences, and then just push it straight into Xero. So it just makes things more kind of exciting for the team. And I think for me, that's the bit of some of the team, I don't think they appreciate how dull these tasks could be without a task, without a tool like G-Accon. So for me, it's almost like that bit of it takes away quite a bit of the boredom that
You
could
should
exist.
you should do that one week maybe as an April Fool's joke and just say, look, for this week and this week only, you have to
Yeah,
do all of this without those automations and just watch them. Hopefully they like, I'm never leaving this place because
yeah.
this would be too hard without it. So
But
uh,
there's almost something here of everyone who's listening, when you're doing those jobs over the next week, just think about the repetition. So think about the repetition and is there a process here? If there's a process to it, then look at the API and it's almost like, well, can I pull and push that information? And if the answer is yes, then G-Acorn is a great tool for you to use.
do you want to, can we break that down just a little bit? Because a lot of people I don't think would understand how to look at the API, right? Like, as in, I know you do because you naturally do this and you're a
Yeah.
self-proclaimed data monkey, I think is what you said before. Uh, what you said at the start. But how do you go about searching the API for people here that are thinking, well, what's my first step? How do I do that?
So first of all, go on a search engine, put Xero API developer, and then it'll come up. And what you almost want to do is look at the Xero. So there's an endpoint called the accounting API, and you'll go through it, and there's lots of things that you will recognize on there, like invoices, etc.
I
And
might even do this while we're saying it, eh?
and so it's that. So go accounting API overview.
Oh, sorry, I've clicked too far ahead. This one here, there we
That
go.
one,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So down the left-hand side, you'll then have the various kind of endpoints. So these are what Xero call endpoints. And so click on contacts as an example. Scroll down a little bit. You've got a get means pull the info you get the information from Xero, and so effectively then you can get this and put it into a spreadsheet. So straight away you can then start to look at this and go, oh, there's a lot of useful information within there. You then go back to the left and you've got that same endpoint for credit notes, for payments, for invoices. And so you can see what information is in there. If you then scroll down lower, you will see where you've got, so back into the middle, you've then got get invoices, but lower down, you will then see post invoices. And so post then means the ability to be able to push things back into Xero. So it looks really complicated, but you'll look at this and you will recognize what you see in the front end. And so for me, then, this is the bit of
Here we go.
take out a trial of G-Accon, use the demo company, and then just play around with it. So just waste some hours playing around with it, pushing information in, pulling it out. And I think for a lot of accountants and bookkeepers, a spreadsheet is your happy place. And that for me is like, this creates a happy place where I can start to play around with things.
Love it. And you know, of all the webinars I've done in the last 10 years, this is the first time I've gone to the Zero Dev, Zero Dev site and encouraged the community to do this. But I love it. It's awesome. And I can see the way your brain's working. It's similar to, I think the first time I found Zapier, like I couldn't be happier. Like, you know, it was a good day.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, same thing. It was a good time because I'm now looking at things going, you mean I don't have to handwrite these things out word by word anymore. I can, you know, I can feed these things and get them out really quickly. I can do
Yeah.
some things on my phone now that should have taken me hours on my laptop. Like,
And where you then start thinking is almost like, well, do I then structure the data in a slightly different way when I put it into Xero? Because I can then get it into a spreadsheet, and it might be then that invoice description, I can split it, that gives me a little bit more context, which enables me to be able to do my job in a slightly different way. So again, it's almost like that bit of how do you change some of your inputs to make a job easier down the line.
I totally agree. Is there any, sorry, I'm laughing at Tyler saying welcome to the API site. I should clarify, it's not the first time I've been here, everyone. It's just the first time I've been here on a webinar. I appreciate it. It's very laid out. It's very nice and organized. I agree. And I just realized actually this part on the right is the easier way to get to the get, post, and put. Do you know what the put? You got a scenario where you're using put for anything?
So it's pretty much put and post are kind of very, very similar.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Um, yeah, I kind of use them pretty much interchangeably.
Yeah, nice. I pulled up sorry, Tyler's got a question. Jonathan, how hard is it to push data into Zero with with G-Accon? So pulling data is usually easy. How hard is it to push data back into
Pretty
Zero?
easy, pretty easy. So when you go to actually kind of build, you select it from the drop downs, and it will tell you what the mandatory fields are. So it won't take much to kind of play around and get comfortable with it. So I reckon within 5 or 10 minutes you look at it and it's like it's a no-brainer. The interface is kind of like well set out, you'll get it, and it's like okay. But also this is where I think the demo company comes into play because you can push it in. and then see what it looks like. But
Yeah.
yeah, easy, easy
Yeah,
peasy.
cool. Love it. Tyler, you're a smart guy. I've every confidence you're going to figure this out. Uh,
If you get stuck, let me know and I'll jump on a call.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. You guys would have a good fun, actually. I can imagine what that call would look like. I also pulled up the G-Accon website to just show the different things that they talk through here. So, G-Accon is the number one Google Sheets integration. They just hit a milestone over actually, there's 10,000 Xero files connected to G-Accon this week. So, huge milestone. Social media posts and celebration coming out for that. But we talk about it as two-way sync between Google Sheets and Xero. So it's, as we said, pulling data down and pushing data back up. I did a session with Dave Selleck I'm going to say about 6, 7 weeks ago. And even that was hard for me to get my head around. Like, it was like hundreds of thousands of journals that he was sending back up into Xero, like so quickly. And I couldn't comprehend everything I was looking at. It was like a 90-minute session unintentionally, but it was awesome. Like it was so good. Um, so yeah, I'll find that recording and try to show that. Actually, I'll have to ask Dave first because there was a lot of stuff in there. But these are all the different things that G-Accon want to help you focus on. So if you're thinking about how do I use it, I find people that like using this kind of tech, like you want to get your hands on the data like Jonathan. Like you probably sound like Jonathan, that you want to know every single data point, where it's come from. You want and love the nitty-gritty of a spreadsheet. You will love G-Accon. That's probably the thing I've discovered the most since we've started working with the team. Uh, they're also just an awesome team as well. Every time I said this to Jonathan in the call, like they're just really nice people, good family business, that have bootstrapped their way to this point, and it's an awesome success story that not a lot of people get to hear or talk about. And I agreed with Andrew's comment before. These G-Accon's definitely been under the radar. Like every time I spoke to Jonathan, yourself, Dave Selleck, Sarah Lawrence, my mate Clay in Austin, it just became really apparent that why isn't every single accountant using a tool like G-Accon? Like that part was kind of beyond me. And I think sometimes it's marketing and branding and helping people understand. But Jonathan, is there any other sort of key use cases you'd think through when you're thinking about how to use G-Accon and why use it?
No, for me, it's that bit of if there's any repetition, then that for me is the go-to um, tool for it. So like the more and more we kind of talk, the more I'll kind of share where we're using it. So we have a missing paperwork report, which literally what we're doing is we're just sending to clients, this is where we haven't got paperwork. And what it means is we can just get them to look at a single spreadsheet all of the time, and we can just say, this is where we haven't got invoices. Takes 5 minutes to set up, and yeah, it just ticks away in the background, gets refreshed, clients updated,
Yeah,
we know where we are, and it just stops chasing, sending of emails and chasing people up. So it's little things like that that the more you think about it, the more opportunity there is to use G-Accon in your kind of like workflow. And I think that's a bit of stop now and again to look at what and how you're doing things and then bring that into play.
love it. So good. Very cool. Well, for anyone that's got more questions, we are going to start to wrap the session up. We've been going for nearly 40 minutes now. Time has definitely flown. It's been an easy session, Jonathan. You've done an amazing job. Thank you, mate. Andrew, good point. And again, it's good to state the obvious sometimes, just to make sure we're on the same page. But you got to make sure data is structured properly first before you try pushing that data back into Xero. James, I'm just going to read your question out. So you said once you've created a template to do a task in Google Sheets with G-Accon, how do you then roll that out to other entities? Do you essentially use the cloud template in G-Accon and roll it out from there, Jonathan?
Yeah. Yeah. So effectively what we'll do is we'll kind of create the template and then we'll share it. And then another team member can kind of come and pick it up. Again, put a video with it as well so someone knows what they're doing. But it is that bit of it's simple, logical, and repeatable. Um, that works for us.
Yeah, nice. Uh, Rakin, your question, is there any similar tech that can replicate the pushing and pulling of reports on Excel? So when I caught up with my mate Dave Selleck that we talked about before.
Yeah.
Dave actually uses G-Accon into Excel using Power Query
Yeah.
as the integration. So using Google Sheets is almost the integrator to Excel, which I thought was interesting. So, Rakin, I would potentially explore that option. But Jonathan, have you done anything similar with
We
Excel?
don't use Google, we don't use Excel.
Yeah, yeah,
So literally we haven't got a zero, we haven't got an Excel license. So we just use Google Sheets.
yeah.
So yeah, no.
Love it. Uh, I've got an anonymous question. By finalizing the zero data, we do detailed review. So how can we achieve this? We do a detailed review. How do we achieve this?
So I guess the bit is, do you need to review everybody's work is kind of my initial thought. Um, it's also that bit of, well, do you review things before you push it in? But ultimately, I think sometimes it's that bit of we review too much, and you've got to let people be experts. And ultimately, then do you review the final reports in Xero, or you can always change things? So it's not like we're committing anything to stone. You can always delete a journal and repost it. And again, that for me is where you've almost got these, if you've got a way into Xero, it then becomes quite easy that you can go in, delete it, and then repost it. So actually, do you move your review points to enable you to then push it in and then review in Xero,
Yeah,
or
nice.
refresh the reports? So effectively, what you're doing is you could push something into Xero, and then you can refresh a G-Accon report to pull that data back out. It will take minutes. So where you're perhaps lifting and shifting an awful lot, it will save times because it's just push of a button.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Tyler, I'm in extension downloaded, extension found, trial data being pushed. Mate, thank you so much. Awesome to hear that. I've just pushed into the chat the free trial link, which will link you to the Google Sheets store to get that installed. We pricing is also available on the website. You can check that out. The pricing is based on the number of companies and clients you need to connect to, as well as the number of users you want to use the product. So typically, if you're an accountant, and you've got 5 users and maybe up to 25 companies, you'd be looking around $150 per month, and that will be in USD. That will be in USD. There are bigger tiers for more companies, and the team is super flexible. Like if you need to chat with them, you need help, they want to help you. They're available to help you as well. All of that is available on the website, and I've put this all into the chat. This will also be in the email after the session. So the recording, a few of these links, they'll all be there. I'll ask this last question, and I'm going to wrap us all up. Rakin, what is the main advantage of Google Sheets over Excel? Sorry, I missed the start of the webinar, so not sure if you answered already. The high level comment we said was that Excel can be formatted or presented better. But I think, Jonathan, your comment was that the APIs, the data, and the automation you can do in Google Sheets is far superior than what you can do in Excel.
Yeah.
Is that
So
about
so
right?
so so, so for me, the big reason that I started to wake up to Google Sheets was the fact that multiple people could work on it at the same time. I don't have to save anything. I've got version history. I've not lost any work in the last 3 or 4 years, whereas I used to cry consistently that Excel would crash and I'd lose because I was in the zone. I didn't save things. So yeah, for me, Google Sheets every day of the week. Um, yeah, try
I
it.
can totally.
Try it. Be open-minded. I think
Yeah.
there's different ways of doing it. Um, there's some really good resources. So
Yeah.
really good resources to kind of look at, and have a play with it.
Love it. Mate, thank you so much for your time. We're going to hold wrap this session there. Thank you, audience, for your questions and getting involved. We appreciate it. It makes this super engaging and helpful. If you want to connect with Jonathan, he's very present on LinkedIn. And I know he would appreciate a connection and love to connect with you on LinkedIn.
I need them.
Yeah, that's your spot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Numbers game.
Uh,
It's a numbers game.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. If anyone's got any feedback on the session, you can throw that in the chat. If you enjoyed the session, please thank Jonathan. I always joke, Jonathan, if this was in person, we'd have, there'd have been roses, we would have stand, there was clapping, it was amazing. I can't believe you said all these amazing things. That's what would have happened.
A
Uh,
beer would have been good.
a beer would have been great. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
I'm into that after. It's dark. You can see it's dark. This is definitely the next thing I'm going to do. Thank you, everyone, for coming along. Jonathan, you have yourself a great day, mate. And we look forward to seeing you guys all at another G-Accon session soon. If you liked this session and you like the look of G-Accon, do me a favor, tell a friend. Go and tell someone you saw a really cool session with Jonathan today. The G-Accon team and I would super appreciate it. It helps us do better work for you all. So thank you so much. Have a great evening, and we're going to wrap the session right there. Have a good day, I should say, evening, day, wherever you are. Have a good whatever you've got ahead of you.
Amazing. Cheers,
Thanks,
Trev.
guys. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, mate. Bye bye.
Bye.